Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Channeling History. As you probably know by now, we're the only show that's brought to you on Para X on Sunday night, where we speak to only the spirits. Tonight, yes, the entertainer. We are going to have a very, very special show with Paul Newman. We've got some great questions. I'm Barry Strohm, your host, and I will be bringing you the words of the spirit guest tonight.
And I'm Connie Strohm, your co-host. And Barry and I are hoping that you all had a wonderful Merry Christmas with your family and your friends. As Barry just told you, tonight we're going to channel with the spirit of the famous actor Paul Newman. Well, I'm sure many of you recognize him as an actor. You're going to find out that he was a major philanthropist through his own Paul Newman Foundation, plus a few other things that I did not know about. Perhaps you did not either. Since this is the season of giving, we thought he would be a great guest.
Indeed, and we're going to try to get to him as fast as possible, so we always try to bring you a small disclaimer. No matter what we say or discuss, there's always somebody who's going to disagree with us, so the opinions or statements voiced on our show are the channeled words of the spirits, do not necessarily reflect our opinions, those of the Parax Network or our sponsors.
Last week, we interviewed the spirit of the Mother Mary and Joseph. They told us the story of the birth of Christ. If you missed that show, it's available on our YouTube channel, and I found it very interesting. We welcome any questions that are submitted through the ParaX channel room, as you know.
Okay, when we begin our channeling, Connie will ask the questions, and I'll answer them in the words of the spirits. But before we start, we always say a prayer of protection. So Connie's now going to say the prayer, and we will begin to channel with one of the greatest entertainers of all time.
God, please grant us your wisdom and protection. Grant us the knowledge that we can handle and keep us safe from all things that will harm us. Keep the messages positive and pure love. Keep us safe from our egos. We ask these things in the light of the seen, the unseen, and the honesty of God.
Okay, Connie, thank you very much. We got a very, very interesting person tonight, so why don't we begin?
Paul, welcome to our show. Would you like to begin with a message?
Yes, I would. Have you ever seen an entertainer that would turn down being able to speak when he had a chance at the microphone? So, thank you very much for having me. Thank you for all the flattering words that you've done. I hope that many of you will try to do well, do good, do things for other people. I tried very hard in my life to try to set an example, and I tried to help many others. And my efforts are even continuing today, over 10 years past my passing. I enjoyed my life. I had a wonderful wife, I have wonderful children. Everything was like a picture book for me. I was very lucky to have people enjoy my acting. I tried to take very difficult parts, and I tried to do the best I could with them. So anyway, Connie, I understand you have some questions, so why don't you start?
Thank you. We do have just a few. First of all, what did you think when you were asked to appear on our radio show?
I was actually quite surprised. I didn't fully realize what the two of you are doing, or actually who the two of you are. When they came to me and asked me, they explained that it would be something that God would love me to do, and I'm certainly not going to turn him down. So anyway, I thank you for having me. I know that you're trying to reach more and more people. Maybe perhaps I can help you with that. So I'm very appreciative of the opportunity. I have not been able to speak to you folks on the other side since the time of my passing. So I do understand that it is a privilege and an honor. And I also know of all of the famous people and even archangels that have been on your show in front of me. So I hope that I will be able to live up to expectations.
I have no doubts that you will. Your mother was a practitioner of the Christian Science, and your father was Jewish. What were your religious beliefs as you were growing up?
Very mixed up. Needless to say that my father's religion and my mother's religion were basically at two extremes. I always believed in the one God. I really believe in him now that I'm on the other side. But I never really was a person that enjoyed going to Sunday school or being taught the Bible or a lot of other things. I was very athletic, and as I grew up, I really didn't do a whole lot of going to church. As I look back now from over here, I probably should have done a better job. But with my mother being on the one extreme Christian side, my father being Jewish, I never really knew what to understand. So in my early life, I really didn't pay a whole lot of attention to religion.
Okay, speaking of your athletic abilities, I understand that you were thrown off the football team in college. Why did that happen?
Let's just say that I was a little bit on the wild side growing up. I perhaps may have had a few drinks before I was supposed to have had. And perhaps I even got in a few fights that I shouldn't have gotten into. Anyway, I wound up being arrested one night, and the coach of the football team did not think it was very funny, and he threw me off. As I look back now, it might have been one of the best things that ever happened to me, because even though I was a pretty fair athlete, I wasn't really that great of one, and I would have probably been wasting my time or possibly gotten hurt. So when they threw me off the football team, I didn't really want to study too hard in college, so I took up theater for my last 2 years. And as you see, it probably worked out pretty well.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would agree with that. What were your religious beliefs as an adult?
I was always kind of in between on different religions. I thought that many of the teachings of the organized religions were not exactly what I wanted to hear or participate in. I always believed that there was a deity, that there was an energy out there that had control of things. I was really unsure how to approach many of my thoughts in that area. I also knew, being an actor, that if I mentioned that I was a Christian, then everybody that was not a Christian would be upset with me. If I mentioned that I was an agnostic, then everybody that was a Christian or even Jews or any religion would be upset with me. So I made a decision early in my career that I would keep my mouth shut as to any religious affiliation. But personally, I always did believe. I just really was never too sure what I believed in.
What did you think when you entered heaven?
Wow. I was very shocked. I knew that I was very sick and my time was ending. But when I truly passed, it was an absolutely amazing situation. Family members of mine that had gone before were there. It was truly a wonderful experience. And now that I'm here, I can assure you that this is an incredible place and it really does exist. As you know, you have the ability to speak with us on this side, and we thank you for being able to pass on our words. But each person will come over here, and each person, I'm sure, will be very surprised about what they find. It is truly a place that cannot be described.
Something that I had never known about you was that you were ordained as a minister of the Universal Life Church. Will you tell us about that, please?
Well, yes. It's really not that big a deal. I mean, I found out that I could, by filling out an application, become an ordained minister, so I figured, why not? The Universal Life Church basically is totally non-denominational. They welcome anybody. And they basically have a very simple teaching. It's do the right thing. I thought that teaching had a lot of appeal to me, and it was kind of like, why not? So I did. I never really took it too seriously, but I in fact did become an ordained minister. Although I never married anyone or did anything with it, it is yes, it was a very interesting situation. It did introduce me to some other people that shared my basic my basic thoughts that religion and movement should be very simple. And I did try to live a life where I tried to do the right thing for others. The golden rule is very important over here. I know we speak about it a lot to you folks back on Earth. But yes, I truly was, and I guess I still am, an ordained minister.
You were also in the military during World War II. Could you tell us about your time in the military?
During World War II, I wanted to be a naval air pilot. I tried my best, but they found out that I was colorblind. I tried to hide it from them, but I found out that they were a little smarter about it than I was. I trained on torpedo bombers. I was going to be a radio man and a turret gunner. It was in 1944, and the war in the Pacific was starting to wind down a bit. We were starting to win, and the Japanese were on the run. I was actually assigned to a battle group, but when we were supposed to leave, our pilot had an ear infection, and I did not go out on the carrier. The carrier was hit by a kamikaze plane, and many of the guys that I had trained with were injured and killed in the attack. So I did fly a few missions, but I'm afraid my military service did not do a whole lot to win the war. I did train a lot of people, but I never really actively participated in heavy combat.
You were married to the actress Jacqueline Witt from 1949 to 1958. Why did that marriage end up in divorce?
I married Jacqueline. She was quite young, and I was a bit older. She was an aspiring actress. I was trying to be an actor. We had a lot in common at the time. We actually had many years of happiness. We had multiple children. They are wonderful children. I guessed that my desire to become a famous actor is what pulled us apart. She was back in Ohio trying to raise our children. I was in New York City trying to get my name known. There was a lot of partying, drinking, the typical stuff that you hear about actors. We grew apart. I knew she became resentful that I was pursuing my acting career, and she could not do that because of the family. Then I met Joanne, and we pretty much fell in love. I did things that I probably shouldn't have done. She found out about them. And we actually had a very bitter ending to our marriage. I totally blame myself for this. I know that what I did was totally wrong. I made up my mind that I would always be faithful to Joanne, and that was the way we lived our life. Joanne and I were married 50 years when I passed.
Yes. What was your formula for remaining together for so many years?
We were good friends. We would have disagreements. We would never show any violence towards anyone. And, there were several things. We had a great emotional involvement. We had a great physical relationship. She supported me. I supported her. As I said earlier, we were good friends, and we enjoyed each other's company. We just simply made up our minds that we were going to make it work. In the entertainment industry, being married for a long time is if you're together for a couple years. We proved that it was possible. Sometimes it was difficult, but it was always possible.
And you did a fine job. Tell us about your relationship with the New York Post.
Well, that did not go real well. The Post was very opposed to a lot of my political views. As you know, I was quite liberal. I pursued many of the liberal policies. I was very opposed to the war in Vietnam. The Post was a very conservative newspaper, and they actually published that I had had an affair with another woman. I had not. They had made this up, and I was very vociferous in telling them about the fact that they made it up. So we had a very, very stormy relationship.
Why did you not support Jimmy Carter?
Even though I was a liberal person and a Democrat all my life, I realized that Jimmy Carter was making a terrible bunch of mistakes. His foreign policy was very weak. He had not reacted strongly when Iran took our people and held them for all that time. His economic policies had got the country in deep problems. There was heavy inflation. Interest rates were high. And I just knew that he was not a good president. No matter what party he was in, I could only excuse so much for him. So I actually did not support him towards the end of his term.
Sadly, your son Scott died of a drug overdose. What would you tell our listeners about drug abuse?
I was devastated when Scott OD'd. I understood that he had a problem, but I did not think that it was so severe that it would take his life. Today, as I watch from over here, I see that there are many, many people with drug addiction problems. There was a time that it was very easy to get medical prescriptions which were addictive. I know that many of the pharmaceutical companies took advantage of the people. They made it easy for them to become addicted to their drugs so that they could make more money. I would warn everyone that taking painkillers or illegal drugs can only wind up with a personal disaster for you. It might ruin your lives. It'll ruin relationships. Your addiction can truly take over your life. I was devastated when Scott took the drugs and we were told that he had passed. I loved him very much. I had actually started to introduce him in the entertainment industry. He had taken some minor parts. I did not truly understand the severity of his addiction. But I would tell anyone that does have a drug problem to seek help. There are many places that they can go for help. There are many things that they can do. But they have to be strong. They have to be much stronger than the addiction.
Could you tell our listeners about the Scott Newman Center?
After Scott OD'd, I funded a foundation in his name. It is devoted to helping people overcome addictions. It is a place they can go to find help. It is a place where they can find help without financial obligation. I felt after Scott's death that I had to do something. I had failed in being able to stop his addiction, and I wanted to give people a way to find strength. Scott's foundation has grown, and there are are many facilities now in his name where people can truly find help. Once again, if you are addicted to drugs, I implore you to please find help.
Thank you for that. You were a heavy smoker until you quit in 1986. What message do you have about the dangers of smoking?
Well, the only thing I can tell you is that I died of lung cancer. And there's no doubt that was related to my smoking habits through all those years. I would tell people that they have to treat their bodies to as healthy a way of life as they can. Drug addiction, cigarettes, alcohol addiction, these are all things that will tear down your body, and you will pay a price in the end. While I did live a long life, well into my 80s, and I did many things, but in the end, passing of lung cancer is a very, very difficult way and painful way to go. So I would caution anybody that is considering smoking. I would caution anybody with drugs or any other addiction. Find help and stop. That is the only way that you will truly be able to guarantee that you will not have major health issues.
Okay, we have a few quick questions from our chat room. One of our listeners would like to know if you spend time with Scott now that you're together on the other side.
Yes. When I passed, he was one of my family members that were first there to greet me. I was so happy to see him again. I felt that he had been close to me at times in life after his passing, but it was a wonderful occasion. He and I are still very close over here, and we spend a lot of time together.
And another one of our listeners would like to know, she's very curious about how you stopped smoking, because that is not an easy thing to do.
My doctors told me that I had to stop. It was affecting my lung capacities, and I was finding out that I did not have the physical endurance that I needed. Acting is not an easy thing. It's long hours. It can be very trying on your body, and it can be very trying on you emotionally. I thought I would follow my doctor's advice. I started simply by tapering back in how many cigarettes I had a day. I just kept cutting them back slowly, and then I decided it was time to stop totally. It was very, very difficult because I had a heavy addiction to smoking. But I think that by cutting that out, it did prolong my life.
Thank you for the info. Okay, you founded a line of food products in 1982 that was called Newman's Own. You donate all profits to charity. Could you tell us about why you started that business?
I always enjoyed cooking, and I made salad dressings that I thought were pretty damn good. I started to package them, put them in bottles, and I would give them to my friends for Christmas presents. A friend of mine said, well, why don't we set up a business of this? With your popularity and name, it should probably do pretty well. I was trying, at that time of my life, to do more for others. I had made a lot of money acting. I really had more than I needed. So it evolved. Once we started to sell the salad dressing, it was so very, very popular that the business grew. I was actually shocked at how fast everything was falling into place with it. So my partner and I decided that we would turn it into a business where all the profits would go to charity. At the time that we started this, we never realized how popular this would be or really how much good it would do. Through the years, I set up my Paul Newman Foundation, and the profits from the food business was put directly into the foundation, and we would spend the money in many, many charities around the world. As it turns out, it's still going very strong. We are still a very profitable business, and all of the money continues to go to charity. This will continue indefinitely. I know that we have been amazingly successful. I never thought that selling a simple jar of salad dressing would lead to a business where we'd be able to generate over $500 million to various charities.
Yes, the exact numbers are over $570 million were donated to more than 22,000 organizations throughout the world. That is amazing. Thank you for that. Okay, what would you tell our listeners of the need to help others?
Helping others is a vital human characteristic. There are many, many people in need right now, and there are many that need a helping hand. Every time that you help someone, it is, shall we say, a positive chip that goes towards your judgment when you return home. Charity is extremely important. There are many people with huge amounts of money that'll think they can take it with them to heaven. I can assure you that they can't. If all of the really wealthy people would take their funds and devote some of it to charity, the world would be a much better place. I hope that people listen and would follow my example of what we did with our wealth. I still preserved enough that my children and family would be happy. But we are doing an incredible amount of good for many, many people.
Yes, another one of your philanthropic successes is the Hole in the Wall Gang Camp for Seriously Ill Children. Would you like to tell us about that charity?
Yes. We were living in Connecticut, and we became aware that there were many children that were suffering from severe illness. Many of them had never had a chance to really have a vacation or to live in an environment where they could be close to nature. Joanne and I decided that we would try to set up homes for these children where they could go, where they could take family members with them if they needed them, and they could at least enjoy some time alone, enjoying nature, doing things where they just totally enjoyed themselves. It was a great thing for us to go and watch these children. That charity has also grown through the years, and we have many, many locations now. It was something that brought Joanne and I much fulfillment during our life in order to see all of the good things that we were doing with these kids. Okay, let's take a small break here. We will be back in about 3 minutes, and we have a lot more questions for you.
Don't go away. Channeling History will return right after these brief messages.
In order for the light to shine so brightly, the darkness must be present. Tune in every Monday at 10 o'clock. The Dark Sun Rising on the Para-X Radio Network.
From Haunted Road Media comes an exciting new novel by author Marla Brooks, Soul Connection, A Deadly Obsession. Two lost souls, ripped apart by murder in another century, find each other again in the present, only to discover that the murderer has followed them through time. Can their love save them, or will history repeat itself? Find out in this captivating new novel by Marla Brooks, Soul Connection, A Deadly Obsession. Available now on Amazon.com and at BarnesandNoble.com.
You've no doubt heard of Tango and Cash, Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. Perhaps it takes two to tango. Well, now, on the first and third Thursdays of each month, there's a show called Tango and Friends at 8 p.m. Eastern on the Para X Radio Network with your host, Bruce Tango. And yes, there will be at least two to tango on each episode, sometimes even more. There's going to be lots of topics and lots of guests you'll all know and lots of surprises. Tango and Friends every first and third Thursday of the month at 8 p.m. right here on the Para X Radio Network. Have you ever wondered what Jesus and his followers would say if you could receive their messages today? In his new book, Spirits Speak, Channeling Jesus and the Holy Spirits, channeler and author Barry Strohm answers those questions for you. Using his gift of spirit communication, he brings you messages from such Holy Spirits as Moses, John the Baptist, Mary Magdalene, Mother Mary, Jesus, and even Mother Teresa and the Reverend Billy Graham. They discuss topics that are important for contemporary life in these troubled times. Spirits Speak, Channeling Jesus and the Holy Spirits is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and other booksellers. Signed copies are available on the author's website, spiritspredict.com. After reading this book, you will never again say, "What would Jesus say or do?" Welcome back to Channeling History. Now, here are your hosts, Barry and Connie Strohm.
Okay, everybody, welcome back. Connie, we have many, many more questions for Paul, so let's get as many in as we can.
Yes. One last thing before we get off the subject of charity. If an individual wants to give to a charity today, which charities do you consider the most worthwhile?
There are actually some very good ones, but you also have to be very careful because there are some very bad ones as well. My foundation, I think, does a pretty good job. I know that the foundation for the Graham family does a good job. That's Samaritan's Purse. Some of the very well-known ones don't give as much of a percentage as I would like them to do. Salvation Army does not give a very large percentage of what they take in, sadly. There are many decent ones. Go online and study them. Make sure that you look at the percentage it goes to help the people. Donating to your local church is often very good. You can earmark funds. Actually, organized religions probably do more than any other group to help others.
Okay, what inspired you to pursue an acting career?
Getting kicked off the football team. I really wanted to play football, but when my own, shall we say, activities got me in problems, I decided that I would study theater, and I fell in love with it.
And it's a lot of us that are really happy you did. What do you consider your favorite movie?
That's a very, very difficult question. I think I did over 65 movies. So some of them I really, really enjoyed. I thought Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid was one of the most enjoyable films that we did. My buddy that was on the movie with me turned out to be a wonderful friend. And we had a great time putting it together. A lot of the camaraderie that we had, that was very true. The Sting I enjoyed. Maybe it was because I was with friends again. I did many, many good movies. Some of them I received awards for. Many of them I didn't. I tried to always play very difficult parts. And I think people never realized how much work it would take to do a part like that. It would, as I say, would be a really tough choice, but I do think that maybe Butch Cassidy was the most fun.
Okay, we actually channeled Butch Cassidy quite a while ago, and he was a very interesting soul. Do you actually get to see him now that you're on the other side?
Yes. Actually, Butch was one of the ones who was there when I came over. I didn't recognize him, but he was there. We have talked quite a bit at length. Butch is quite a character.
Yeah, what's he think about how you portrayed him?
some things I can't pronounce on the over the air like this. He thought that some of it was pretty good, but he thought some of it was pretty far out. He actually, for being a crook, was a pretty good guy. He really never killed anyone. He did have a great sense of humor, and in many instances, the circumstances of his life kind of led him into what went there. But I don't think he wasn't that upset over some of the things that we did, but he did tell me that some of the things weren't accurate.
Okay. You knew many of the greatest actors, Robert Redford, Marlon Brando, and James Dean, to name just a few. Who did you consider the greatest actor you ever worked with?
Boy, you're putting me on the line with that one, too, because I work with some of the greatest. Marlon was a great actor. I think he was probably as good as any. James met an early death. He was a wild man. I think that if had James lived, he would have probably been one of the best. I acted with many. I had great opportunities. Jackie Gleason was a lot of fun. I mean, he was funny, but his role as Minnesota Fats, I thought that was an outstanding role. It would be hard to narrow it down, especially since I have to see most of these guys over here on this side now. I think that maybe I'd better not pick a favorite.
Getting back just one sec for one more question about Butch Cassidy. What did he have to say to you about how the movie ended?
He told me I was crazy. That wasn't really how the movie ended. I mean, I made it look like they were heroes and all that good stuff. But actually, they outsmarted law enforcement, and they all lived into ripe old ages. So, it was entertainment. I guess that's the best we can say for it. But he was quick to point out that I had no idea what I was doing.
Okay, you played a lot of characters in the movies. What was your favorite character?
Oh, you keep asking these hard questions.
I'm sorry.
My favorite character. Oh, I think that I would have to say that I had several that were favorites. My character in Color of Money was a very difficult one to play. I think that my role in The Sting, I enjoyed that a lot, but that was because I was among so many good friends. I'm not sure. I don't think I really do have a favorite. I had those that I had the most fun playing. I always tried to enjoy myself. I prided myself on my sense of humor, and I would try to bring a little humor into even the darkest characters that I would play. I had many nominations for Academy Awards, and I guess that was an honor. But I just truly enjoyed every part that I played. I tried to pick very difficult parts, often black characters or people with emotional problems, because I thought that would show off my acting ability. I was very careful in selecting the roles that I would go into, and I think that played a very large role in my success.
So what did you think when you finally won the award for Best Actor for The Color of Money back in 1986?
I figured it was about time. I thought that the Academy never really truly appreciated a lot of the roles that I played. I always knew that the Academy was very political. And I thought that some of my outgoing political opinions played a role in why I was being passed over. So when I was finally picked, the first thing that went through my mind was, it's about time.
Okay. What do you consider your worst movie?
One of my first movies that I made, it was called The Silver Chalice, and it was an absolute disaster. It was so bad that if I had somebody I didn't like, I would make them sit down and watch the movie with me.
Okay, we have a question from the chat room again. A listener would like to know what level of heaven you're on and if you've seen Jesus.
I'm on the very top of the 6th level. I soon think that I will be able to move into the 7th. I was very well judged for my life. We all make mistakes, and they pointed those out. But the guides were very, very satisfied with what I had done with my charities and how I had helped so many people. So I'm in a very high level. I'm very blessed over here. I can go down and I can see many of my friends. Many of them have not advanced as far as I have, but I still love them.
Okay. You were quite successful at auto racing, another thing I did not know about you. To what do you attribute your interest in racing?
I always liked to go fast. When I would go fast on the roads, I would get arrested for speeding tickets. So I figured, well, I've got enough money, I can buy some good cars and I can race on a track, and there are no police on a racetrack. The more I did it, the more I really enjoyed it. I thought that racing is an incredible sport.
You won a race at Lime Rock at the age of 81. Very impressive. What would you advise seniors today?
I would advise seniors to live every day of their lives as if it was the last day. Seniors today are living much longer because of medical advances. Take advantage of every day. Do not fear death. You're going to die. We all are. I proved that. Do not fear it. If you truly believe in God, you've nothing to fear because you're going to heaven. If you've lived a miserable life and have taken advantage of others, you're going to have to face those facts. But I have found out that God is very forgiving. And if you are living a bad life, it's never too late to change.
Another question from the chat room, and this one is really, really serious. How many eggs did you really eat in Cool Hand Luke?
Oh my God. I lost count. They kept making me reshoot the damn scenes. I remember going into the bathroom and throwing up so I could eat more of them. So I actually don't know, and I really don't want to know.
Okay, let's get back to your racing. What did you think when you were inducted into the Sports Car Club of America Hall of Fame?
I knew that I had done a lot of racing, and I was very happy that they did it. I think part of it was because of my fame, but I was very happy to see it. I was over here at the time. It would have been damn nice if they'd done it while I was alive, but I guess you can't be choosing some of these things.
Very wise. You were a lifelong supporter of liberal causes. Now that you're on the other side, what do you consider the most vital cause to be pursued by humans?
I don't think that there's any one vital thing that needs to be pursued. Global warming is a huge problem. Nuclear proliferation is a larger problem than when I lived. If humans cannot get control of nuclear weapons, I think it is inevitable that they will wipe themselves out, and that will be the end. I would hope that calmer heads prevail. I know there are some terrible countries out there that have nuclear weapons or on the verge of getting them, and I would hope that it would be possible to end the nuclear race. That is probably the most critical thing.
Okay, you were a lifelong Democrat. What do you think about the current Democratic Party? And what would your advice for them be?
My advice to them would be to go back to truly trying to help the people. I was a Democrat because I tried to do a lot of social things. I was against the Vietnam War. I started charities. I tried to help people. I tried to bring people's attention to global warming. These are all things that the party should bring to the attention of the people. They also have to be mindful of the fact that large government deficits will lead to the inevitable problems for the country. You have to tailor social spending with resources that are available. A huge deficit of spending will lead to many problems for the country. It is possible that the deficit can become so huge that the country can go bankrupt. When I did Newman's Own, I assured that my charity donations were from the profits of the company. The Democratic Party has got to realize the realities of financial impact. Many of the policies that they are pursuing, I am still in favor of. I am not in favor of a lot of the radical things that they are doing. Remember that I chose to not support Jimmy Carter when he got out of control. So I would suggest that they move back to the middle. I suggest that radicalism is not going to work for them. The vast majority of people in the United States are basically middle of the road. Many of them can vote Democratic one year and Republican the next, and that's a good thing. I hope that the government pursues strong social actions in the future, but I would caution that they need to be matched to the resources that are available.
What steps would you take to stop the global warming, the risk of it?
That is another very difficult question. Now that I'm on the other side, I can truly understand a lot of the problems. The United States is actually a leader in preventing pollution. The world has got to take concerted efforts against the countries that are the main polluters. China, India, and other emerging countries have got great pollution problems. They need to be introduced to sources of renewable energy. They need to have funding available in order that they can fund their growth without adding to pollution.
Okay. You were very opposed to the Vietnam War. Why were you opposed to it?
I fought in the Second World War because I knew that we had been attacked. I had trouble seeing our boys being sent over to be killed in a country where the people were not in favor. The vast majority were not in favor of our president. We had created a situation where we went to war with the intent of supporting South Vietnam. We had to assume total control of the war, and it was resulting in the killing of thousands of our young boys. I felt that whatever happened in Vietnam was not going to be a great challenge to our internal security. So I opposed that war while I favored participating in the Second World War.
Could you tell us about your relationship with Richard Nixon?
I was very opposed to the Vietnam War. And I had a platform from which I could speak, and many people were listening. Nixon thought that I was a subversive and that I was taking the people away from what he felt was the path that our government should be on. He actually put me on an enemies list. And when he did that, I was very proud. I felt that I was being truly successful in having my words heard. So we avoid each other over here. While there's no hatred on this side, it is certainly possible to dislike. And I think he's bearing a grudge against me.
Quite possibly. Okay, you were a strong supporter of defending the First Amendment, especially for the written word. What is your opinion concerning the First Amendment protections in our current times?
Things have changed drastically with your social media and your mass media companies. The First Amendment I still consider to be one of the most vital of all human rights. I know that social media in many instances is censoring the words of individuals. I would prefer that individuals are free to speak their mind. I did it when I was in life. I opposed many political ideas, and I made many enemies through it. But I enforced my freedom of speech. The First Amendment is critical. If you allow government to shut down First Amendment rights, you will find that your government will come to an end.
You were very active in nuclear disarmament. Much has changed since your death, with countries like Iran or other countries being very close to having nuclear weapons. What do you see as the best path forward to prevent a nuclear war?
The United States usually felt that if they had overwhelming force and could assure mutual destruction, there would be enough deterrent. I always felt that there would be some idiot out there that would try to take advantage, that felt that they could have an overwhelming first strike, or felt that they could do basically what they wanted with blackmailing because of their nuclear weapons. Today, there are insane people with nuclear weapons. North Korea, Iran. It is a far more dangerous world than I think it was even when we had the Russians in the Cold War. At least the Russians were rational. You have got individuals in Iran that think it is a good thing to go out and kill Christians. This cannot have a happy ending. I really don't know what the best policy is at this point. I would hope that the countries of the world would perhaps put heavy economic sanctions on all of these countries. Heavy sanctions might bring about their overthrow, and they might be overthrown in time, that they cannot assure mutual destruction. Nuclear weapons have grown massively, even since my passing. I think it is too late to do many of the things that I had hoped for. The only way that people are going to avoid imminent destruction is to learn to coexist. How to teach them to coexist, it's something I can speak about for hours. There is no good answer.
That is true. If you were alive today, would you take the vaccine?
Yes, I would. I know that many people are fearful of it. I know there are some people that are allergic, have bad side effects. But I also know that most of the people that are in your hospitals at this point are unvaccinated. I would hope that individuals study the vaccines, understand them. We are not aware over here of any great political plot to destroy humanity through any vaccines. We are aware of problems with because of the nuclear weapons that maniacs currently have available.
Okay, it looks like we are running out of time again before we can get all of our questions in. But do you have a final message for us?
Yes. I would thank you very much for allowing me to be here. Of course, I'm repeating myself. I had a wonderful life. I had a beautiful wife. I have beautiful children. I had wealth. And I had the ability to help many other people. I think that the greatest satisfaction in my life, in spite of all the fame that I had, acting, being in movies, conversing with the greatest talents of the time, I think that the greatest thing that I had in my life was the satisfaction that I had from helping others. Even as I watch from over here on this side, I can see that my foundation and my charities, my home for the ill children, these are all things that are still continuing to grow. Some of my children are active in these foundations. They understood my desires. They understand what I would still like to be doing if I was still on your side. Go out and help others. You will find the greatest satisfaction from doing this. Many people find happiness in hurting others. That is an emotion I cannot truly understand, and I would strongly advise them that they change their ways. Call someone that you know that is lonely. Help them. Find a person that is suffering from drug addiction. Find a homeless person. There are infinite ways that you can help others. I was very lucky in my life. I made great sums of money, and I was able to come up with a concept that would continue to help many people through the years. As Newman's Own continues to prosper and make good profits, those profits will continue to help people indefinitely. Not many people can come up with a program that can live indefinitely, like Newman's Own. We were led to that by the guides. When I returned over here, I understood that this was all part of the life plan that I had when I came back. So I just want you to know one thing. If you follow the golden rule and help others, your life will be so much happier. And when you return home, you will find out that all will be very well for you here in heaven. So thank you very much. I know that Barry's got his eye on the clock, and he will probably cut me off if I don't shut up. So thank you for having me. If you want me to return, I would be more than happy to do this again.
Thank you so much, Paul.
Okay, that was a really interesting interview. He is quite a character. Next week, we're going to be channeling the spirit of Martin Luther. He was the leader of the Protestant Revolution, and you will find his story to be very interesting. We've channeled with him before. You can submit questions or suggestions to our email, channelinghistoryontarax@gmail.com. So thank you for listening. I hope you have had a great holiday season. I hope that you will follow his advice and help others. We have started a new podcast called A Weekly Message from Jesus. It's on my YouTube channel. Everything that we do is on the YouTube channel. Thank you for listening. Please join us on Sundays at 9 p.m. Eastern Time on the ParaX Radio Network.
God bless you all and have a wonderful week.